So there was a shocking case last week where a Garda, he's now a former Garda, Eamon Dillon, was jailed for a particularly savage attack on his then girlfriend. But we've looked into his past and found out maybe some more red flags were raised about Gillen's behaviour before, in connection with one of Ireland's most well-known unsolved murder cases.
Yeah, this is, I suppose, the very tragic and sad and, as you say, unsolved murder of Raonaid Murray in September 1999. And after that, Eamon Dillon was actually appointed the family liaison. And so his job, any liaison officer's job, is a link between the family and the investigating officers. And he wasn't part of the investigation team involved in what was, been a huge investigation that's gone through several iterations over the years since. But there was, at one point anyway, I suppose part of his job, he was looking after a sister of Raonaid, and the parents complained to his superiors that he didn't bring her home when he was supposed to from a match after a rugby match. And this is only 6 weeks after the murder. And also there was an allegation then that he had taken drink when he was given one of the sister and friends a lift as well. And I suppose the worst of the allegations then was that in the presence of one of the friends of Raonaid's sister, that he urinated on a tree close to the scene at Silchester Crescent, where she had been killed in 1999, this in Glenageary. So the parents made a complaint, and he was removed as the family liaison officer. And then there was Garda disciplinary action taken against him, which he challenged in the courts.
Yeah, and I mean, this was reported at the time because, like a lot of these workplace, issues, he challenged the proceedings basically, and therefore came out in court. And instead of being an internal disciplinary matter within the Gardaí, some of the allegations were detailed in the court case Gillen brought against the Gardaí. He brought it, and there was appeals, and it went to quite a high level, I think, before it was did it go to the Supreme Court, who allowed it to continue?
No, it went as far as the Supreme Court,
yeah,
and then which upheld that the disciplinary proceedings could continue against him. And then, of course, they're private.
Yeah, because they wouldn't be subject to public scrutiny. What happened within the Garda discipline issue, obviously, then would be a private matter. So Eamon Dillon then, what year was that? That was a sort of 2000.
So the murder was September 1999, and the complaint was made the following month. It was 6 weeks later.
Yeah.
And there was Martin Donlan, chief superintendent. He swore an affidavit about calling to the house after a complaint being made by the parents, and that they informed him that they didn't want him to continue as a liaison officer. And there was one affidavit he swore in 2005. So this 6 years after the alleged incident, and went through what we kind of described about possibly drink driving and urinating on a tree close to the scene, and that he had spoken to the officer about it, to Eamon Dillon about it, and he was removed as the family liaison officer. And this was in Martin Donlan's affidavit. And at the time then, Raonaid's father, Jim Murray, he was reserved a right. He's allowed to keep, if he wanted to make a complaint, Gillen, after the case had been, if it gets resolved. And they did write a detailed letter of complaint in 2002. And then that was put to Gillen, who denied the allegations. And then he took, again, this is how we know about what happened, because he took judicial proceedings that went all the way to the Supreme Court, which ruled against him. And then, of course, the outcome of these proceedings, they've never been disclosed publicly.
No. So Eamon Dillon doesn't appear too much in the media again until last year, I think, when he was charged in connection with, when you heard the details of the case last week, I mean, it was a particularly horrific, attack on his then girlfriend.
Jennifer Clinton is the girl. Yeah, and they've been out socialising together in, I think it was Blackrock Tennis Club, and she went home before him. When he came back then, this is all evidence that was heard in the circuit court. He called her downstairs, told her to sit down by the fireside, and stood over her in an intimidating manner and began calling her names. He made threats to her like, "You're going to die tonight, and I'm going to rip your head off."
Yeah.
And that prompted her to start recording on a mobile phone. And she actually recorded 40 minutes of this abuse. So it was very quick thinking. And he punched her with a closed fist 3 times in the top of her head. She said she needed to go to the toilet, to try and get away from him, but he refused. And she eventually managed to get up into the bathroom and kind of cleared the windowsill so she'd have a way out, and eventually got out of the house. And of course, the fact that she had the 40 minutes of the threats, it was, it was crucial, I guess, in the case.
Yeah, I mean, these cases, because like at one point during the assault, she speaks about, contacting the Gardaí or asking him to stop. And he basically, Gillen laughs at her and sort of implies that if she does go to the guards, that they're not going to take it seriously because he's still a serving officer. And certainly the judge in court refers to that as being, a factor in adding to Miss Clinton's fear. And she spoke in court. She said, "I thought of my children and my grandchildren and made a break for it." This is how she describes trying to get free. And she still has recurring nightmares where I did not get out. What the charges ultimately, he pled guilty to 2 separate charges and was given a prison sentence of 20 months in total.
Yeah, so 28 months, I think, isn't it?
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah. And the final 20... it was 4 years in prison and the final 28 months. So we'd have to work that one out. We're suspended.
Yeah.
But I mean, I suppose the reason she recorded it was because she genuinely thought she was going to die and wanted to leave something behind so people would know what had happened to her. And, and as you say, like she talked about, the sense of being overpowered and trapped, and that if she didn't survive, that she wanted something to know. And like one of the things he had said was, "I'm the biggest white psychopath you'll ever meet." And now apparently evidence was given as well that he was actually shocked himself at his own behaviour when it was put to him. And he more or less he said it was like another person inside me, and he didn't have it in him to hit her in that sense. So he was embarrassed, and that, and accepted that he could snap and be angry with drink. And there was a whole element then brought in that he had issues in his own background, including the death of his son, which had caused him to drink. So he was obviously, he was obviously, I suppose, trying to not necessarily play down, but at least provide some kind of explanation, because there was no reason for this sudden attack. There hadn't been apparently, there was no evidence given of an argument beforehand or some issue between them. It was very much out of the blue.
Yeah, so that's the mitigation given by his defence solicitor or the defence barrister as they would. But I suppose Miss Clinton describes as well the fact that he was a serving Garda, and she says, as a long-standing member of An Garda Síochána, he would present himself as a figure, someone to be believed and relied upon to uphold common decency and morality. And she said he did not tarnish the reputation of An Garda Síochána, but of himself. He subsequently retired from the force and is now serving a prison sentence for this crime.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I haven't looked recently, but at one stage there was about 5 or 6 former guards all in the Midlands prison. So
yeah,
I know, well, there's definitely 1 or 2 that are still inside. So it's more than likely he'll be on the same landing as the rest of them, because regardless of what they do, or they're going to be regarded as guards by the other inmates, and they really can't mix. So I mean, it is a tough place for an ex-Garda to be in.
Yeah.
So there will be, and of course, in some cases that would be brought up, in mitigation as well. That they're going to find it harder than ordinary people to do it. But again, I suppose then there's the breach of trust. So it kind of it neutralizes that mitigation in one sense.
It does, and look, if they do the crime, they do the time, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I know it's a sad case. Like, really, I mean, it's a horrific thing for someone to go through.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Eamon.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Niall.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.